Something very important to my wife, Kat, is having an exit plan for living in Mexico. So even if we were full-time in Mexico, we wanted to have some way to get back to the United States, some way to easily do that if we should decide to change our minds. Now we're doing part-time, so it's not as important. So I am here in San Miguel de Allende, and I have someone named David who is going to talk about his exit plan and how he created a strategy to move to Mexico while still having something back in the States just in case.
Hi everyone, my name's David. I'm here meeting Brighton for the first time. I'm welcoming him to San Miguel de Allende. He wants to know a little bit about how I got here and what was my strategy for moving here. I talked a little bit about coming to Mexico the first time and just not knowing if I'm going to want to stay long term. As I mentioned to him, I had kind of this game plan, this come for a year, see how it works. Worst case, go back. I still have an apartment, condo that I own in Colorado. It makes you feel secure, so you have a fallback plan. Still had my furniture and things like that. You have to have the ability to keep all that stuff. At that time, I had a relative staying in the apartment and looking after my things and taking care of my things back home. But I was here in Mexico, started working actually, and little by little, it just worked out. And then 1 year soon enough came, and it was time to decide. And I said, yeah, Mexico's for me. It goes a little bit backstory. I had just previously, about 7 years ago, I'd lost my primary job in the telecommunications industry. And so I was kind of doing a little now what situation, and a little other lifestyle changes for me as well. I was single at the time, just went through a divorce, and it was like time to make a decision. Am I going to stay back in Denver, or am I going to do some traveling, or just kind of change the scenery for a little while? I have always had interest in teaching, and I had taken some previous courses teaching English, and I decided to make it a little bit more of a go while I was waiting for maybe to find another job, while my resumes were like floating out there. So nothing was quite happening. So I decided to come to Mexico City and work on my ESL training. And that was a 1 month course where I spent in a school getting trained to be a ESL teacher, English as a secondary language teacher. And that went well. Spent a lot of time in Mexico City, enjoyed it so much that I decided to, yeah, I wouldn't mind living here. And sure enough, I went back to Colorado, kind of took care of business, and then did a little bit of thinking again and see what I wanted to do. And you had to put the pieces in place. How am I going to get there? How am I going to keep the things here? Do a little preparation work, right? If you can secure everything, you have money to survive on because you're not going to be working for a while, and just go with it, take a chance. There's not, life is all about taking some risks. One of the bonuses of visiting other cities is when you tend to live there, you kind of get more associated with the culture and, of course, the people that live there. I was working there as a teacher. I was getting classes here and there, and then I also started teaching private students. And one of the perks, of course, is you start to meet, in my case, beautiful woman. So I was lucky enough to meet my now wife, Larissa, at one of those kind of meetups. We're going on a little bit over, 4.5 years now. So getting back to where did I live? And, I started off again in Mexico City taking the class. And so there I was using Airbnb while I was in the course. When my course ended, I went back to Colorado just to live there, as I said, and just kind of figure out what I was doing next. Sure enough, the school back in Mexico City was calling me and said, hey, would you like some work? I said, yeah, but not in Mexico City. I want to go to the beach. I always wanted to live on the beach in Mexico. So the school hooked me up with a job in Playa del Carmen 5 years ago, I think I started. And so I got the job. Next thing I know, I'm on a plane. I got an apartment, just rented an apartment locally. The school administrator they looked for an apartment for me. And so I lived there. And I was an easy walk to, if anybody's been to Playa del Carmen, the main avenue is, I think, La Quinta. And the school was right off there. And I had a really beautiful walk in the morning, just maybe 15-minute walk from my apartment to the school. I'd teach in the morning and then have the midday and afternoon to do whatever on the beach, right? Go, hang out at the beach clubs, go back to my apartment. At the time I had a pool and go into the pool. And then Then I would go back in the evening and teach in some evening classes. And this was like maybe Monday through Friday. And then the weekends were pretty much free. I did enjoy Playa, but come summertime, it does really get hot. And it was kind of not the place I wanted to be. So I put in for, hey, I want to go back to Mexico City, got some work. And so I kind of made the move back to Mexico City. And then I started working there as well and went through the kind of the same process, rented an apartment. First, it was an Airbnb. And then I found a longer term apartment. Maybe like 2 years being there, a year and a half, 2 years, something like that. I met this woman and we kind of got together, and she had her apartment in part of Mexico City and I had mine. So we'd get together on the weekends. She was working all the time. A few years of living in Mexico City, as you can imagine, if you've ever lived in a big city, it can get it can stressful. It's, one of the biggest cities in Latin America, if not the biggest still. And I just felt it was time. I wanted to get a little bit away from the hectic life. And I visited San Miguel before on just a weekender. I never thought I'd live here because I always had read about it. And it's kind of like it seemed like more of a expat retirement community. But realistically, once you come here, you'll very much explore different areas, and it's really for anybody who wants to enjoy countryside, beautiful scenery, beautiful town. There's no beaches here, of course. We're kind of in the highlands of the Guanajuato state. If you want a beautiful lifestyle, it's it can't be beat.
Me gusta mucho la ciudad. Hay mucha diversidad de población, hay muchos queridos gringos. Es una ciudad que podemos estar como en dos países, América del Norte con México, Estados Unidos, perdón, y tiene mucha arquitectura bonita, es muy tranquilo a comparación de otros lugares. Es muy hermoso San Miguel de Allende.
It's kind of a place of blending between foreigners and Mexicans. A lot of people think it's too many gringos, for example, but you can somewhat see that because it's not the atypical Mexican town, but it still retains a lot of its charms. And once you get out of Centro itself, you're really living in a real Mexican town, right? So it's like every other town in Mexico. So a lot of people are preoccupied with the idea, well, if I don't speak Spanish, how am I ever going to get around or survive in Mexico? It definitely helps to know English, but Spanish. Here in San Miguel, many people get by with very minimal Spanish, and mostly they'll speak English. And they have many of the locals will speak English as well. But it's really essential if you really want to live here a long time to at least get a good feel for the language, and it's one way to enter the culture and make friends. I don't think I'd ever have this relationship if I didn't speak at least intermediate level Spanish, because it's very difficult to kind of connect. Even to this day, I'm not fluent by any means, and I'm still learning Spanish. So she, of course, is my everyday teacher. So I have that kind of benefit as part of the relationship. Eventually, we'll get her to learn some more English, but we haven't kind of got there yet. So it really opens the doors, so Spanish. So here in San Miguel, we have wonderful, places where you can go for classes. I actually maintain a meetup group that meets once or twice a week. And it's just a perfect opportunity to practice your Spanish with some locals who are trying to practice their English. One of the things that's great about San Miguel, again, is there's a lot of these groups, right? If you're into dancing, if you're into music, if you're into art especially, it's a big art town. You can find a group, so you're never going to be bored, right? There's always somebody to share your interest with. We're going to give you a quick tour of the place we live, the house we live here. We actually live outside of Centro. Most people, when they come to live in San Miguel, they want to live right in the heart of downtown, or Centro, as we call it. It's beautiful down there, but it could be very pricey, right? So with that ability to be in the center of everything, the prices can be a little high. Most people, when they're traveling here, they'll start off with an Airbnb in Centro. In our case, we didn't really feel like Centro would be a good location because we have two vehicles. My wife works in landscaping, so we've got a little business to run. So getting in and out of Centro would be a little bit hectic every day. We are actually in the process of opening a business not too far from where we live. We're about, I'd say less than 10 minutes to Centro. So just on the outside, it's actually on the highway entering from Querétaro. And so it's very convenient for us to get in and out whichever direction we want to get to. We have a little bit more space and a little bit more privacy. We're on a private little housing unit section here. We found this originally when I came to San Miguel. I was doing what they call house sitting. That allowed me to move around the city a little bit and try different locations, and at the same time save some money while I was saving up to get established here. So it gave me a unique opportunity to see several homes and beautiful locations around town. This house was actually being built, and we were on like the waiting list to get in. And as soon as it was ready, that's almost 2 years ago, coming up. So we're the first ones in here. The unique thing about the house is the owner, this kind of house is made of adobe, a kind of modern version of adobe. It's supposed to be very eco-friendly. We were actually looking at an apartment. We had seen a listing for an apartment that was actually across the street from us. Funny story. So we met the realtor or the agent for the time, and he showed us the apartment, and it was okay. It was the right size. She didn't quite like it as much. And I said, I was looking across the street and the builders were building what looked like a new house. And I said, well, what about that one? What's going on there? And the owner actually came out and, just kind of said, oh yeah, we have a house, but it's not ready yet. I said, well, how long? So she said I think it was going to be about 4 months wait. I think we looked in October and then we had to wait till January. So it's like, I prefer that. And we kind of had a quick little tour. It wasn't finished yet, but we had already a plan for the same money that we were going to rent a smaller apartment. We have this place with a driveway and a garden in the back. You'll see in a little bit. And it was just something we can do a little bit more with. So we have a secure gate at the entrance, and it's what we call a privada, which is basically just the property owners here. Several houses here just owned by a small community. And we keep the gate closed at night with a little clicker. So it's very easy to park here, no problems at night. As you come into the entrance, we immediately come into the living room. And it's we don't have everything quite in place yet. We're kind of still in move-in mode, even 2 years later. But we have the living room, the basic necessities. Next to it's the dining room. My wife actually had the table made by a local carpenter, which is very typical here in Mexico. Rather than going to department stores all the time, you can actually get a carpenter to make a specced out furniture for you, as well as anything else you need in the house besides tables and chairs. Next to that, you can see the kitchen. And as we progress, we've got the hallway. We have actually, I would say it's 2.5 bedrooms. We have our main bedroom, which also has a master bath. And we have a guest room, which kind of doubles as her little home office. We had a little kind of small room that I use for my office where I do all my teaching, my online teaching, which I also am lucky I have a little window that gives me a nice view of our little backyard garden. And actually, we just had, since she's a landscaper, we just had some work done, and we still have a little bit to go. One of the curious things that everybody asks is, what's the cost of living here in San Miguel? San Miguel is definitely not the cheapest place in Mexico to live, comparatively speaking. For her, it seems quite expensive, coming from a Mexican perspective.
Es muy caro para los mexicanos vivir en San Miguel.
Yeah. So, but for the most part, for Americans, you can see definitely get a better bang for your dollar right now, even with the exchange rate kind of on par right now. We signed we go by a 1-year lease with the owner, and we are currently paying, depending on the exchange rate, somewhere around just below $600 per month. And that includes cable. She supplied us with cable that I use. Definitely one of the things you want to look for if you're working online, especially, is a good location with cable. Not every place has fiber optic, for example. So if that's important for you, be sure to ask about it and verify it. What's the speed? We pay some utilities, not much. Electricity usually runs us about, I don't know, $10 to $12 a month. Depends in the winter. When it gets a little cooler, we might run the heaters. It might run up a little bit, but not much. I've never paid over 20, which would be like 400 pesos per month. I think that's even high. Mm-hmm. Water, we pay the owner this from a local source here. It's because we live outside the city, we have to get supplied by a separate source that they provide for us. That usually runs, I don't know, maybe $5 to $10 a month, not much. And the other thing you usually have to get is gas. And we have for the kitchen and heating of the water. We have a tank, which is very typical on Mexican houses. You get it refilled. And that usually runs, we just had it filled about a week ago. And it ran about 1,000 pesos, which is roughly about $50. And that typically for the two of us, that runs us about 2.5, almost 3 months if we're not taking long showers or cooking a lot or anything like that. So you really just need the gas for cooking and heating the water for showers and things like that.
So we started out this video talking about exit plans, and I'm pretty sure these guys aren't exiting Mexico anytime soon. Business is going well. They are about to show me as I exit into San Miguel de Allende, they're going to stop by a vivero or a nursery that they're starting. Also, they have plans of looking for land and building a house and whatnot, but still maintaining that place back in the United States, because it's always great to have something that is priced in dollars, that is increasing at the market rates that are going up in the United States, just in case you want to switch back to the United States at some time in the future. So I've got other interviews that you can check out over here with other folks in San Miguel de Allende or Querétaro. So hasta luego.